happened. This term has been used for many years, but what does it really mean? When somebody says, you know, check out this library, it's got a Hollywood sound. Really what you mean, it just has a big contemporary orchestra sound. You know, there's many orchestras worldwide that play with the big orchestra sound. It's really not unique to Hollywood. So the bottom line, by saying something sounds Hollywood, it's really not saying much unless you qualify it with a date. So let's just, this is kind of like a history, you know, film score history, very short, 101, I guess you might say. So many of you probably know this, but we'll just fly through it because I think it's rather interesting. So the earliest movie writing was directly derived from European romantic traditions of the late 1800s. The old guys, Steiner, Newman, Colston, they were masters of this style, very much influenced by Wagner, by Strauss, leitmotifs, Bruckner. We heard, well, sometimes it's stolen outright by some of those composers. Very influenced by opera during that period of time. In the 50s, jazz became a major staple of the golden age of Hollywood. Composers like Elmer Bernstein, Alex North, they loved jazz, they heard jazz, and you know, some of them played jazz. So they started bringing jazz in as an American vernacular into the music. So jazz became a component. Besides jazz, in this period, also 20th century orchestra composition and modern playing techniques. You know, serial music and modern and chromatic harmonies started coming into the music. Composers that we all love, Bartok, Stravinsky, Holstorff, Carmina Burana, how often has that been used? It continued to be used. So these composers influenced composers in Hollywood. Bernard Herrmann, Jerry Goldsmith in Planet of the Apes. There's a lot of passages that are very, very similar, relate to these composers. So not only jazz, but 20th century advanced composition or advanced techniques started coming into the language. Pop styles also started coming in. Mancini, Burt Bacharach. You know where that has gone now. Sometimes there's the songs that Burt Bacharach and Butch Cassidy. You know, Raindrops Falling on My Head. That song really has nothing to do with the plot, really. It's just something grafted in the middle of the movie. If you watch the movie, if you've ever seen it, you know, it's not like the song is being sung by a character, has really much to do with the character. And that was unique. And we're used to that now, but at the time, that wasn't that. You know, if there was a part of the score, it really pertained directly to the movie. In the 70s and 80s, a resurgence of large-scale symphonic writing for the orchestra began drawing on both romantic and 20th century writing, thanks primarily to our man John Williams' big action hits. Now the trend seems to be moving toward a more basic harmony and melody with much more emphasis on percussion and rhythm. Minimalism music has become very influential. Minimalism or pulse music. We all know that music where there's all constant pulses going, sometimes divisions of the beat. It's not very melodic, but it's very rigorous, very rhythmic, very exciting. Now this style, Terry Riley, Steve Reich, Philip Glass, who also write film music, Hans Zimmer, and Don Davis are two people, you hear that a lot in the score section. It's got a lot of minimalist techniques in there. Playing styles, the Hollywood sound used to be characterized by very heavy vibrato. Now it's much more subtle. One thing very clearly that you can hear. Harmonically, the music of the Golden Age was richer than today, employing much more broader harmonic spectrum. You know, you used to hear much more altered dominant chords, more full voicing with chord extensions. You don't hear that as much these days. The writing is much more simple and more inside, you know, as opposed to being sort of outside harmonically. You know, sometimes we hear diminished or augmented voicings, but it's not as common. Now this, of course, you can listen to independent movies, and there's always exceptions, but I'm talking about the general stuff that's coming out these days, in the big tent movies. Now, melodies have also been simplified. Romantic melodies, characterized by larger leaps, like major sevenths, have given way to more simpler pop-like melodies, with smaller intervallic leaps, easier to remember or to hum. Now, why this has happened, I mean, we could talk about this for hours, but I think suffice to say, it's sociological changes in taste. Right? Directors, composers want music in their movies that people are comfortable with. They want to bring people in, they want them to be comfortable in the theater. So, as taste in our society changed, the composers write music to deal with that change. So it's a constant evolution, really.